And good Wednesday morning to you. Welcome back to First News. It is 20 minutes in front of 8 o'clock, and now joining us, talk about the big topics affecting our state this week, is the CEO and founder of Opportunity Arkansas, Nic Horton. And Nick, welcome back to the show. How you doing this morning?
Hey, let's go. I'm excited. It's been a huge week, so I'm happy to be here.
It has been. Well, let's start at the top, and I wanted to get an update on the special session of the state legislature this week. Obviously, talking about income tax cuts, talking about property tax cuts, and so it looked like as far as the tax cuts that they voted yesterday. And so, tell us a little bit about how the vote went.
Yeah. So we were actually there on Monday and testified in House committee on the bill, and it passed House Rev and Tax unanimously. I think it was about unanimous on the Senate side as well. And then, as you mentioned yesterday, went to the floor of both chambers, passed with supermajority margins in both chambers. And in fact, I found this really interesting, and some of your listeners probably will as well, because it involves a handful of legislators from within your listening area. But there were actually about a little bit over 20% of the Democrat caucus in the House voted for the income tax cuts. And I just, having been in the building all week and been on Twitter and hearing all of this noise about tax cuts for the rich, and this is just the governor paying back her wealthy billionaire donors, and all of the crazy lies, frankly, that have been shared and spewed for several weeks. 20% of the Democrat caucus actually end up supporting this. I just found that really fascinating. Kind of still waiting to see if the Democrat Party of Arkansas is going to blast their own members and call them out for, voting for tax cuts for the rich. But in all seriousness, kudos to those folks for doing the right thing. But it kind of is a head scratcher in terms of, why do we have to play these games? Why do we have to continue to, frankly, lie to Arkansans and tell them it's just for the rich, it's just for the wealthy, it's not going to help anyone, it's not going to do anything for the economy? We know none of that's true, and I think, frankly, these folks voting for this are admitting that they know that that's not true. And I just hope we can get to a point where we can have a more honest conversation about putting money back in working Arkansans' pockets and all of the good that that's doing.
Well, and any way you slice it, no matter how you look at it, it's $500 million when you talk about the income tax that will be spent, at small businesses and at grocery stores and things like that, as opposed to going into the state bank account, and that's a good thing. That helps the economy here in our state. The other complaint that I've heard about the tax cut, and obviously coming from the left at this point, but what do you say to people that say, well, we should be using the tax money on programs to help this group or that group versus keeping the money in our individual pockets? I mean, how do you take that complaint, which mainly comes from the left as well?
Yeah, I mean, very good question in a way, just because that has continued to come up. But the answer is really simple. I mean, we are spending record amounts on all of those programs, on Medicaid, on education, go down the list. We're spending more money than we've ever spent. I mean, we talked last week, Toby, on this segment about our new Medicaid research paper that came out that shows a third of our state budget goes to Medicaid.
Right.
So, show me the problem. Show me where. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. There are problems within Medicaid, but it's not from a lack of funding. It's from a lack of prioritization and how we're spending the money and where that money is going within the program. But there's not a lack of money in the Medicaid program. There's not a lack of money in the education system. We've spent record amounts on all of those programs. And again, there's $1 billion surplus, even with funding going up in every single one of those programs this year in the new budget. There's still $1 billion surplus. And so, as you said, I mean, look, state government clearly has more money than they need to keep the lights on. And when they do, it's the obviously correct thing to give it back to taxpayers, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing, and obviously will benefit the entire state to have that money flowing around in the economy as opposed to holding down the bank account at the state capitol. Did the property tax cut get a vote also yesterday? Did that happen?
It did, and both that will. I have to go back and look, but I think that's going. I think both of them are going to the governor's desk at this point. They are convening today to hear a couple more things, some resolutions and such, which I'm happy to talk a little bit more about some of those as well, because some of them have gotten a lot of attention. But yeah, we're moving full speed ahead with $500 million in income tax reductions and income tax relief, and $50 million in property tax relief, which is also a really big deal.
And so business will take place today with the special session, even though it is the holiday, the Juneteenth holiday?
Yep, today will be the final day,
Okay.
Barring something unforeseen. Today will be the final day of the special, and they'll wrap up a handful of things and then go home.
So, and we'll get to the handful of things. I think those are the resolutions you were just talking about, but also I assume the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, they got funded. Everybody settled on the $170,000 a year for the director position, and that moved through yesterday as well.
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, obviously going back to the fiscal, there were some things that were poorly handled, and some surprises that legislators were handed, and some things that just needed to be sorted through. But look, there was no scenario in which Game and Fish was not going to be funded or have a budget going into July, the next fiscal year. It was just a matter of the details and figuring out, what was appropriate. So that's all moving forward, and that was always going to be the case.
What are the resolutions that'll be worked on today? Some of the odds and ends before they wrap up the special session.
Yeah, there's a handful. There's a couple that I find particularly interesting. There's one that's being run by Representative Ryan Rose. That's a non-binding resolution, but basically just a recommendation, or they call it a sense of the House, to say, hey, we don't think the abortion amendment that's being circulated right now is a good thing. We don't think that Arkansans should sign it. Mm-hmm. We don't think that they should vote for it. But then there's another one, and this was really fascinating. I encourage folks, we're going to be publishing the video and an article as well about what happened on the Educational Rights Amendment, which, Toby, we've talked a lot about. There's a resolution drafted by Representative Britt McKenzie to say basically the same thing as what they're saying on the abortion amendment. We don't think this is good. There's no fiscal note. We have no idea how much it's going to cost. There's no pay for. It's going to be a setback. It's going to end education freedom. It's going to infringe on religious liberty, all of these things that we've been talking about and documenting. And it was actually really, really fascinating to watch because he filed this resolution yesterday morning, and there was no one there to speak for the resolution because it's a resolution, right? It's a non-binding. It's just, hey, we want to have a conversation about this. We want to put it out to the House and make a recommendation. The other side they came out in droves, and I find it really kind of funny, to be honest, that here we are 2 weeks from the signature deadline. By every indication, they are way behind on the signatures that they need to get. Mm-hmm. And instead of being out gathering signatures yesterday, they had 15 people at the Capitol to testify against this non-binding resolution that, frankly, doesn't do anything other than just say, we don't think this is a good idea. And again, we'll be publishing the video, but they said everything from, oh, no, this doesn't violate religious liberty. They said this fixes learns and changes learns, and then the next person said, no, this doesn't do anything to the Learns Act. They were really, and then we got to hear about how the resolution was disenfranchisement and election interference, and all of the just typical lefty talking points that they always use. And I think everyone in the room was really stunned. About 10 minutes in, there was kind of a moment where I think everyone looked at each other and thought, wow, these folks actually think that this does something. I mean, I think they thought the resolution was actually going to stop them from gathering signatures or something.
Yeah, no, it sounds like they don't have their priorities and talking points lined up right now.
They don't, and again, just the fact that they spent all day, up there rather than out getting signatures, just kind of shows you. And these are, let's be honest, these are the folks that have been in charge of our education system and want to continue to be in charge of our education system. They said again in testimony, the treasurer of their group, Bill Kopsky, said in response to the legislator, well, we still don't know how much it's going to cost. We're working on it.
Wow.
We've got a team of economists working on it, and we'll put something out by the election in November, but we don't know yet. And you could hear just like almost this pin drop in the room of like, you want to put this on the ballot and you're asking people to sign it. It's like Nancy Pelosi on Obamacare saying, well, we'll pass it so you can find out what's in it. I mean, that's been their approach from the beginning on this. And the fact that they still have no cost estimates. And he said, well, I can't tell you how much it's going to cost, but I can tell you that the returns will be 9-1. Think about that.
Wow.
The returns will be 9-1. I don't know what the one is, but I can tell you whatever
right.
it is, it'll be multiplied by 9.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I had one other item I wanted to talk with you on before we wrap up today. Late last week, a committee of lawmakers approved a motion to audit the procurement process of the Board of Corrections and their hiring of outside legal counsel. And so what do you know about this, and what's expected to happen through this audit, and do you know how long it'll take?
I don't have a good sense of how long it'll take. I mean, my guess would be it'll take the bulk of the rest of the year. It'll probably be sometime late this year before we get the detailed results. But I do, want to applaud Senator Jonathan Dismang, Senator Ben Gilmore, Representative Jimmy Gazaway, some of these folks that have just been relentless on this issue. And we've talked about this at length on your show in the past, Toby, that we've got this huge problem with the Board of Corrections where they think they're completely autonomous. They think they're above the law. That's not just an opinion. Like, that's their demonstrated actions, and in some cases their words. They went out and hired this hotshot attorney, which they had no legal authority or funding to do, and then they came to the legislature and said, hey, here's a bill for $200,000. Would you please pay this? And that was after they tried to get their CFO to just pay it without coming to the legislature
right.
at all, and he said no, to his credit. So it's a huge mess, and again, I want to really brag on all of these legislators that have continued, governor's office and others that have just continued to say, we have to have accountability. It's like the education system, right? We've been doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result, and it's not happening. And so something is off here where you have this really opaque Board of Corrections that meets in secret, does all these FOIA violations, you name it, go down the list. So I'm really glad that they're doing this audit. I think there will be even more that comes out, and this level of accountability is something that I've never seen in terms of the legislature and the executive branch holding the Board of Corrections feet to the fire. So I think it's really encouraging, and we'll see what they find.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, going to play out over the rest of the course of this year. You can see Nic and Opportunity Arkansas's work at opportunityarkansas.org is the website. Also on X, on Twitter, and also on Facebook as well. But Nic, we always appreciate the time. Appreciate all the insight that you give us on what's going on here in the natural state. But thanks for joining us this morning, and we'll talk
Anytime.
again next Wednesday.
Look forward to it.